One way or another, mental health issues affect each and every one of you. You know why I know that? Because each of us have a brain. Mental health, I don't mean you're smart. I mean you have an organ called a brain, and the brain doesn't always work perfectly. One way or another, millions of Americans are affected by mental health issues, and we tend to forget that they are just brain issues, brain disorders. We understand they're heart problems, but when it becomes the brain, somehow we stigmatize it. And many people go untreated because they're afraid, or they're afraid of that stigmatization. Former Congressman Patrick Kennedy is working to put an end to that. He's here and taking your calls, 855-DR-5. Now, Patrick, a couple things. Let's review your history. I remember your story very vividly and how courageously your recovery played out. Can you just tell my audience a little bit about that?
Well, Dr. Drew, I have two chronic illnesses. I have chronic asthma and I have a chronic addiction. And unfortunately, as you point out at the beginning of your show, we still differentiate in this country between these illnesses, even though they're physical illnesses. Both of them are, because one illness involves the brain, and the symptoms of the brain illness is behavior. And of course, behavior, when it is strange or out of character, is bizarre, crazy, nuts, psycho, all the words that we use in a pejorative way to describe a physical symptom when your brain isn't working properly. In my own situation, I'm a run-of-the-mill addict and alcoholic. The compulsion to self-medicate, no matter what the drug or alcohol was something that was a physical allergy, much like other allergies. When I consumed drugs and alcohol, I couldn't stop, and hence I became an addict. And of course, in recovery, you understand these things as physical illnesses, also obsessive illnesses, which are psychological, and of course there's spiritual element to this as well. So what we're talking about is a very complex illness. And Dr. Drew, I think one of the reasons why people feel so fearful of these illnesses is because they are so complex, and because they involve who we are as people, the very essence of who we are as individuals. They're very frightening, because there is nothing more sensitive than how we are reflected by our friends and family members. And of course, I think all of these things lead to stigma. Yeah. Stigma is why people don't avail themselves of recovery. Recovery works. I'm one of those 20+ millions of Americans in long-term recovery. But I have to deal with my illness one day at a time, just like I have to deal with my asthma. I have to stay out of situations that are going to provoke my asthma or my addiction. I need kind of chronic care, which means that I need to often take medications to keep me on track and not in an emergency room and not in a crisis situation. And as you know, Dr. Drew, when I was in Congress, I worked to make sure that these illnesses are treated like all other physical illnesses. Right. That they seek the same reimbursement rate as other physical illnesses.
And you've done a great job in helping push through what we call mental health parity. Unfortunately, it never seems to really happen. It's about making that a reality. I'm as passionate about that as you are. I want to talk to Cynthia in Nevada if she has any questions for us here. Cynthia, go ahead.
Hi, Dr. Drew. My question goes to why people with depression or mental illness are shunned. They don't get support or compassion versus any other disease. And in my own life, my children seem to think I could be fixed. I need to be fixed like I'm a toy. And so they won't support me at all.
Yeah, Cynthia, I'm so sorry. And Patrick was just talking about this, how it affects us as a person, and we don't like to think that there are disorders that can affect us, that our brain isn't a perfect instrument, that things can change our moods or motivational priorities. Patrick, what would you say to Cynthia?
Well, Cynthia, as you relate so well, we add insult to injury. It's not enough just to be suffering from a mental illness. now you have to face the stigma and ostracization that comes with suffering from a mental illness. So it really is, stigma is bad because, as you know, it further isolates people because they feel so ashamed of their illness. Then they retreat from getting the care they need, and they also retreat from their loved ones and friends. And of course, that's when their illness can get even worse, and the pathology of their illness becomes ingrained.
Yes, you need the people in your life to understand what this. I think it's. I'm going to use a strong word. It's ignorance, and people don't understand what this is, and we need to raise sophistication and understanding so there isn't this fear, and the fear it's built on ignorance.